So you did the Grooxs and the Grooxs. I'm sorry.
The Grooxs, yeah.
And that's the first time I realized I was mispronouncing that. By the way, I've already done a drop for y'all on a podcast, and I mispronounced it.
Right.
The Grooxs, and now Mimic. And you and I were talking about that a bit earlier, which also is kind of forging its own path. Not kind of, but definitely is forging its own path. Not just with New Orleans, typical New Orleans sounds, but I think in general y'all are doing something completely different. So I mean that needs to be mentioned, and then they can find some of that music on Bandcamp, also on NewOrleansMusician.com.
NewOrleansMusician.com, NewOrleansMusician.com, and as of today, Reverb Nation.
Cool.
I posted one song on Reverb Nation, but it's the lead off track on the Bandcamp site.
Sure.
So they can find it there and check it out. And like I said, we're working on newer material.
With who?
Mimic, Apollo and I.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on newer songs. We're looking at maybe five tunes, and then adding in the first song off the Bandcamp, a song called Within a Nulled Future, which was composed sometime in around December. And maybe doing like a 6-song CD or like a little mini EP or.
That's what I was going to ask. What's your strategy for release? Because these days it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, we're probably. I was talking to Apollo, like maybe we would do like what they call the waterfall thing, where you release a single, and then maybe 4 or 5 weeks later, boom, here's single number 2, and then boom, here's single number 3, and you do it every so often.
Sure.
As to not overwhelm or inundate the listener, or because I've been doing a lot of research on this, and because of the streaming model and because of the way music has gone, the things now it's going to be either singles or it's going to be EPs, and that's something Apollo and I talked about when we first started the band. It's like the songs that are on the Bandcamp, they're fairly short, not intended to be short. They're like 2 and 3 minute songs, and this time around, like the newer stuff, like, let's make them a little longer. But what I was telling him was that, nowadays people have really short attention spans.
Absolutely.
And the days of putting 8 to 10 to 12 songs on an album, no. Nobody's gonna get through the first 5. Like there's a band I will not mention who I was a huge fan of, and their last CD I got, they had like 15 songs in there, and I'm thinking, dude, nobody's going to make it past song number 4 or song number 5. Like, I couldn't even do it. And it might have been 12 songs, but anyway, it was a lot of songs.
Sure.
But the way it's going now, everything, because of the streaming model, everything is, it's going to be singles or it's going to be EPs.
Yeah.
So we're either going to do an EP or we might do it as a single, and then 4 weeks later, boom, another single, boom, then another single.
Sure. And
just make the announcement, hey, new Mimic single.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much the way it's going now. And we're not streaming, not yet anyway, only because the streaming model, it's very unfair to the artist. I mean, I get it. I know bands want to get their stuff out there.
Sure.
Like, hey, we're now on all the streaming platforms, TuneCore, Apple, Spotify. And that's great because a lot of people get to hear it, but at the end of the day, is it really benefiting the artist? And, is the artist making, getting anything out of it? And for the most part, no. And there was even a memorandum or something they were trying to pass. I saw this online. In regards to Spotify and other streaming companies, to make the model more fair for the artist and more lucrative.
Oh, really? Was it like a mandatory minimum or something? Like a minimum wage, I guess, so to speak?
Yes. And this was like a year or 2 ago. And I don't know if it ever went to a vote because it was never resolved. But you can find that online. It was a motion that was filed in court on behalf of, I think, some musicians, some music company, to make the streaming model much more fair for the artist.
Yeah.
Because that's how a lot of people get their music now. They stream. And as a result, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine earlier, a sound engineer. And as a result, a lot of musicians, they've sold their back catalog. One of them notably being Carmine Appice, the dude who, played drums for Ozzy and Bark at the Moon, wrote songs for Rod Stewart. He's a legend. His drummer Vinny played for Black Sabbath, for Heaven and Hell, and Mob Rules. Mm-hmm. Connor Heap sold his entire back catalog for a set amount because he's like, hey, really no royalties anymore. Everything's streaming. You know, you don't get anything off that. And I also heard that, I mean, I'm not really a big fan of pop music, but I heard Justin Timberlake did the same thing. He sold his entire back catalog because, you know, nobody's buying really CDs anymore. They're not buying physical copies of music. I'm one of those weird guys, though. I want the physical copy. I don't care for streaming. I don't use the streaming services. I want the CD. I want the physical product because I want to see who played on it. I want to see who engineered it.
Yeah, the liner notes.
The liner notes.
Yeah,
I love that. That was one of my things with LPs and cassettes. Like, I couldn't wait to see, like, who did they thank? You know, who did they use? You know,
Sure.
and I'm still like that. You know, and just to real briefly, you know, when Lars Ulrich decided to call Napster out and take him to court, and he got a lot of flack from it, and, you know, from people like, oh man, you know, they got popular through tape trade, and, you know, to hell with him and what he did. But in retrospect, Lars Ulrich, he was right. He said this is going to deprive musicians, of being able to make a living doing this, because you can download everything. We have no way to make money. So now, you know, bands, they've turned to, nowadays, you know, either it's, you know, selling merch, or playing live shows. But then again, when COVID hit, COVID really took, you know, a lot of that out of the equation, because of it, you had stagehands that couldn't get work. You had bus drivers couldn't work. Techs.
Yeah.
Great, you name it.
Supporting services.
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
And they couldn't work. So as a result, bands couldn't tour. And even then, there's still some residual from that. You have bands, I think, the band Loudness from Japan, those guys, they canceled their U.S. tour because the logistics just weren't there. And some bands, not only them, have to cancel because even after whatever money they've made, once they've paid out whatever help they have, there's very little for them. Some bands will still lose money, but all because so many people are out of work for COVID, and a lot of the help, you know, wasn't available as well. So some bands won't even tour. They're like, no, it's actually going to cost us money to tour.
Yeah.
You know, especially after you've paid out, you know, whoever you've paid out, your agent, you've paid out the venue, or whoever you've paid out, you know, the tour bus company who you're renting your tour bus from.
Yeah,
or, you
not
know,
a lot left.
Yeah, no, there's not, you know,
Yeah.
and especially unless you're selling your merch directly, you know, and if you're doing it through a company where you have to recoup your funds for the amount of merch sold,
Sure.
you know, that's money you got to pay out of pocket as well from the merch. So for a lot of bands, it's not worth to tour, and they'll just, you know, they'll put out singles or little EPs and say you can get the music here,
Yeah.
you know, for X, you know. So it's changed a lot, man, and it's crazy.
I really like. I mean, I go digging for vinyl whenever I can, and I've appreciated being able to do it in different manners. Like, sometimes I'll check to see who produced it or what label they're on, and that's going to tell me a bit about the album. And then if I recognize one of the members in the band and I know his music style, then I'm starting to learn. I'm starting to understand more about what it is I have in my hand that I've never seen before. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'll be looking for, you know, whatever, and like CTI or Kudu records, or, you know, if Quincy Jones was a producer or something, I know about where they're coming from with these things, you know. And I've always appreciated that. And there's so much more within the folds of, you know, inside an album that you can open up and look into, you know. I've always appreciated that. I think a lot was lost on that in streaming. It's not there anymore. And
no, absolutely, especially too when it went to the CD model. There was just a lot when CDs started coming out. It's one thing to look at, you know, like say a Celtic Frost or Possessed album cover or whatever. It's one thing to see the actual vinyl, but then it's another thing to see it on CD. It just kind of lost something a little bit. You know, I mean, believe me, when you've seen some of the album covers I've seen, or, you know, back in the 80s, going to, like I said, Warehouse Records or wherever, or the record stores I went to, and just seeing these album covers, you know, there's definitely a difference between that and the CD. I mean, there is, and just something, you know, got lost along the way, and
Definitely,
of course it's to be expected, but especially between CDs and streaming, to where, like, when the Napster thing first hit, I knew somebody, that's all he did was stream everything and brag, like, yeah, I got, like, blah blah blah. I saw this, and I'm like, dude, but I'm thinking to myself,
What do you
man,
know? What do you know about it?
yeah, there's nothing to, there's no liner, there's no
Think
nothing.
about, and you talked about going from albums to CDs. The medium shrunk down to like
Yes.
less than a quarter of the size of an album, so that's that much less space that you have for artwork. And when you
Exactly.
think about albums like Santana's Abraxas or Miles Davis' Bitches Brew, these
Yeah.
were fold-out albums that
Yes.
then became the size of a small poster with continuing artwork. Never seen before original artwork.
Right.
Murals. These
Right.
are gorgeous, pieces of art that you just kind of throw away because you can stream it now. It seems kind of like a little bit soulless to me.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I mean, and the same could be said for the ELO albums from the '70s and the Rush albums. Man, you open them up, and it's like, whoa! It's a little, it's like a tapestry. It's like, man, this is phenomenal. This is incredible.
Yeah.
Because I had a friend of mine growing up. He had all the Boston and ELO and Rush and Queen, and I would just sit there as a kid, mesmerized, open them and look like, wow.
Dude, that's where
And-
it started for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Somebody else's collection. They were so inspired by it, and they're like, this is a whole world, really detailed world. This is amazing.
Yeah, and definitely lost in the CD and definitely the streaming age for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did your mom, did she have a record collection, or did a family member? Did you ever have that experience as
Just
a kid?
my cousin. My
Yeah.
cousin had some of the bands I just mentioned. Plus, he had the Police, Blondie. So yeah, my cousin did, and that's where I got exposed to some of that, listening to it on the stereo,
Yeah.
and just looking at those album covers, and especially some of the Queen album covers and the ELO ones with the big UFO in the cover of the Boston. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Definitely, like you said, it shrunk down on the CD, and it just loses. It just loses that.
Sure.
Yeah.